It's great to be here. Thank you, Tom. I hope the London cough doesn't get in the way. If it does, give me a break. So it's fair to bet, for me to assume that most of you in the room who, I can't see, Mary Alice is quite right, it's quite disconcerting. I trust you there. It's fair to bet that you are here because you believe that business can have a greater purpose and can have meaning. And I'm here because in my day-to-day life, I often hear and see the opposite, surprisingly. So the prevailing wisdom, the common sense, if you will, that I've confronted in my life at JustGiving is the opposite, is that on the one hand, the people who do good, who change the world, who make contributions, those guys work in charities. And on the other hand, businesses are in the business of maximizing shareholder value. That's what I hear all the time. That's what I'm confronted by all the time. So when I was asked by Will McInnes to contribute a few words today, I thought the questions worth exploring would be, can business genuinely be ever for good? And if so, what does it really look like in practice? But before I do that, let me tell you a little bit about JustGiving itself. So I met Zareen Karas, the CEO of JustGiving, and my partner in the business 14 years ago now. And our vision was really to do something very, very simple, but very transformative, we thought, which was to bring charity giving online. And this is a long time ago, so charities didn't really have, some of them had websites, but very few of them. And they certainly didn't tap into the immense power that the internet was available to them to tap into. So to put our vision into a sort of nutshell, this is it. Our vision was to connect great causes to people who will care. It sounds very simple, and it's got, this is 14 years ago when we first thought about this. It was about utilizing the extraordinary power of the internet, of the connectivity, the storytelling, and the transactional power that it brought to the business of charity. So our idea was practically based on these ideas. The world is full of causes. I mean, I know in the room here today there are loads of people who work for social enterprises, charities, and other good things. The world is full of them. Whether it's people fighting child poverty, or fighting against animal cruelty, or indeed scientists and doctors finding the next cure for the illnesses that afflict people. The world is also full of givers, and as Tom said, a lot of you are probably among those. They live sometimes in the same place in the world, or worlds apart, or they live side by side, but live very different lives. But the key insight was, of course, people give, and they will give if they have a surplus if they're asked, and if they're asked well and in a timely manner, in a really relevant way, they will give even more. So that was the very simple idea. So rather than create another cause that would add to the cacophony of asks out there in the world, we thought, what can we do? We can create a set of tools, a platform, if you will, that will make technology affordable, accessible to every cause in the world, and really chip away at that big problem of how we can connect people with causes. So basically, in a nutshell, our job is to make that ask incredibly compelling, and to make it possible for anyone in their everyday lives to sort of be moved by something, pay attention, and pay, and make donations. So we're not terribly boastful about numbers, but I think they do paint a picture. To date, we've been at it for 13 years. It's a very, very long time in internet years. We've got 22 million users, and who've given close to £1.6 billion, so that's over $2 billion for those who count in dollars. So looking back, it's amazing really how little we knew about what we were about to do. We didn't know that charities would be very hard to convince that the internet would be good for them. That was the first surprise. We didn't know how many incarnations the JustGiving website would need to take. We started with a donation portal. Do you remember Portal, those of you who are old enough? Listing companies, it was like a shop floor. And then we dabbled in sort of corporate giving. Corporates said they would do great things, and they didn't, funnily enough. Then we almost by accident, we stumbled upon the idea of enabling people like you and me to sort of rally their friends around something that they love. Funnily enough, that one had legs, but it took us, amazingly, looking back, quite a while to work it out. But there was one thing that we did know all along, and that was that we wanted to be a business, a for-profit business. But why? Because everybody we spoke to in the early days sort of, surely you'll be a nice charity, you'll be a foundation or something, it'll be really jolly nice. But we wanted to be a for-profit business for two reasons, really. One was reality. Nobody would fund us on a philanthropic basis. The few philanthropists we met, who were kind enough to meet with us, said, look, you're completely untested. This is a really risky proposition, so go and find some risk capital for it. But more fundamentally, the main reason why we wanted to be a business, a for-profit business, is because we wanted to be sustainable. We needed a surplus that we could reinvest all the time without having to go in with a begging bowl to corporates or philanthropists, once again, every year to try and survive. We needed a growth engine. We needed a surplus engine that would enable us to innovate. This was a technology company we were building, and technology is very, very hungry for innovation and for capital. And most importantly, we needed a model that would enable us to scale. So if we served our customers well, which we intended to do, then we would generate a surplus that would enable us to serve them even better further down the line. So instead, our charities pay us a fee on every transaction that we process. And let me tell you a few examples of the things that surplus has enabled us to do over the years. So I'll be very quick on that, because I know you don't want a sales pitch. First, we enabled people to trade online. That was the first thing, and that was a bit of a revelation. We all take it for granted now. We pay online on the mobile, et cetera, all the time. But back then, it was a big deal. And we automated the tax reclaim, et cetera, which was a really, really big deal for UK charities. Then when Facebook opened up, first as a site, but then as a platform in 2007, we were among the first UK companies to create an app on Facebook. And then soon after that, we enabled people to stay within Facebook to donate, which was another UK first. And our story with Facebook is really exciting and completely transforming the way that people give. We caught an enormously important wave, mobile, which is transforming super rapidly the business that we do and that we're still really busy investing in. And that, again, is changing everything that we do. And while we were doing that, we onboarded more and more people and more causes. So while we were innovating on the top layer, if you like, we needed to create an incredibly resilient and robust platform to enable people to swarm, to use Rick's expression, onto the site in patterns we hadn't seen before. We no longer just listen to the Today program and watch Newsnight and then politely make our donations. You know, social media is changing everything. Let me give you a really sad but really powerful example of that. Two London marathons ago, a gorgeous young woman called Claire Squires died within a mile of the finish line in London. And what started on social media as, you know, a few sad messages from families and friends ballooned and sort of grew into an enormous wave of global sympathy in memory of this young woman whom the vast majority of people who were talking about her had never met. It was quite an extraordinary moment. She had a page on JustGiving. She had run for the Samaritans, the charity that she really loved. And the Samaritans page absolutely exploded. And in a matter of hours, extraordinary amounts of money were given, over £1 million in a day. At peak, we were processing 20 donations a second. So it's the sort of scale that, of course, the Samaritans couldn't have handled, and they were very grateful to be able to, you know, sort of say, go there, not on our site, go to JustGiving and donate. And so this incredibly tragic story was able to be transformed into something of lasting value. The Samaritans raised significant amounts of money and put it to use that wouldn't have been possible before. And that proves, in a very sad way, what the JustGiving site does for the fabric of charity here and beyond the UK. And now, of course, we're building that next generation of the product that I've alluded to, which is to make that the ask and the matching between giver and cause forever better, more relevant, and more personalized. We're really super excited about that. But I'm not here to tell you about the product, although I could go on. I'm here because I really believe we would not have achieved any of these things, let alone still be able to pay people in the business and make a living out of it, if we had run the business along conventional lines. I think making a business that's truly equally commercial and compassionate at the same time is not an additive process. You can't just run a business as usual and then inject a little bit of good after 5 p.m. on a Friday or something. It requires doing and thinking in fundamentally different ways and on a number of dimensions. I don't have time to explore all of it, but I just wanted to pick two. Two of the really important aspects of how we run the business. The first is our shareholders, the mindset of shareholders. At JustGiving, we are really fortunate to have shareholders who, very strangely, don't laugh, don't think that the purpose of a business is to make money. The purpose of a business by our shareholders, and certainly our principal shareholder, Bela Hodvani, the purpose of a business, as far as he can see and as far as we can see, is to serve. It's to serve all constituents in a balanced way, to use his language. And what we mean by that is that product is not a goal in itself, it's an outcome. It's a byproduct, if you will. A byproduct of doing other stuff, and that other stuff is creating a great product, enabling the people who work with us to have a meaningful life at work, to learn and do interesting things, and basically together do something valuable, and creating a great product being the number one thing that we do. And of course, one day, provide a fair return to shareholders. I say one day because in the case of JustGiving, that day has yet to come, as our shareholders, our poor old shareholders, as we call them, have yet to get a penny back. But it doesn't mean that we're not hungry for performance, by the way. In fact, and here's the paradox, we believe that by thinking absolutely long-term about the business, by really staying in a problem, chipping away at big problems over the long term, reinvesting all our surpluses, serving our customers really brilliantly, we stand to create a business of greater value in the long term, and that's the paradox. So to put it bluntly, the way I look at it is that it gives us a tremendous competitive advantage to think long term. So let me give you a couple of examples of what taking the long-term view means for us. So it's a tax story, so if you want to yawn, it's now. When we set up JustGiving, the tax authorities in the UK deemed it to be subject to VAT, the value-added tax. And we thought that was unfair because charities are particularly, and you probably know this in the audience, charities bear the full brunt of that. They can't offset it against their other costs. So we took up the challenge. We challenged the view that HMRC that VAT should apply to our fees. And it took us 3 years of hard graft and a lot of cost, and we won the challenge. So our charities were delighted. We could stop in 2010 to charge VAT. But our costs, our own costs, because we can no longer offset VAT against our own suppliers' fees, our costs have increased permanently, but close to 7%. So in any other business, I know that would be deemed to be financial mismanagement. In our business, it's the best evidence that I can think of that we really put our customers first, and we think that will deliver value in the long term of a much greater order of magnitude. The other example is far more important, you might argue, than just cost management for our customers. It is how we approach innovation. So we have undoubtedly got a really effective growth engine now. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have raised £1.6 billion. But we wouldn't be adding long-term value if all we did was tweak that engine and make it greater all the time. We do that. We obsess about optimizing that conversion rate and that page load. But that's not enough. We have to innovate. In fact, we have to invent the things that might indeed possibly even disrupt our very current growth engine. And by disrupt, I mean in a positive sense. We need to invest, and we do devote quite a chunk of our resources every year to invent things that might fundamentally recast the way we add value. So I'm very proud to give you a preview, nobody else has seen it yet, of, these are some of our users which are very rudely failed to present. But here in Brighton, a week before anybody else sees it, I wanted to unveil Yinbi. Yinbi is one of those innovations that we've been chipping away at for the last year. And Yinbi is, I suppose you can guess, is the positive opposite of NIMBYism. It is for people who want to do a positive change close to them. This is about local projects. It's for people like Michael, a guy in one of our users in East London who decided to turn that bit of ground outside his housing estate into a garden. He raised £520 for that on Yinbi in beta. And Sean raised £2,500 to buy new wheelchairs for the Lancaster Bulldogs. And those are just a few of the few projects that have raised £250,000 in private beta. So we're really excited about the potential of this. And this is true innovation because this is enabling people like you and me to collect the money themselves. They are not a charity. They don't have trustees. They don't have all of that structure around them. But we think that crowdfunding generally, and I know Brighton is a hotbed of the use of those tools, has shown that people, of course, trust charities and they want to support them, and that has enormous headroom, but they also trust each other to do amazing things, and we want to be part of that. And we think that if we're not part of that, we'll miss a trick to learn what makes people give. And we're very excited about Yinbi. We'd love you to give it a try when it comes to life next week. So those are just the few examples of the things that exemplify the way that our shareholders, positively expect us to behave. So that's the lesson, right? You could say, to build a meaningful business, it's the shareholders stupid, right? To paraphrase Bill Clinton. Unless they are prepared to delay their rewards, unless they're prepared to take risk over the long term, you don't have a meaningful business. That's true, but that's not enough. I really believe, and this is personally very important to me, that for a business to be truly meaningful in an enduring way, we have to rethink not only what we do in the business, but how we do it at a really personal level. So this is the single most wonderful thing about founding a business, right? You can really shape it your way. So this is the control freak in every entrepreneur. You'll be glad to know to hear that, not being an engineer, I don't get close to the code. So there are more people with more capable hands who shape the way that JustGiving works. But there are fundamental things that I still can, and Zareen still can influence. It's the way we behave and the way we do things as a team. And I wanted to give a few examples of that. And when Will invited me to come, I said, I'm finding it quite hard to describe sometimes what it is that makes JustGiving what it is as an organization. But I'll have a go. There are really three things that matter to us. So if you walked sort of metaphorically with me into the JustGiving sort of office, I hope you would see those three things. The first thing that has always mattered to us and to me a lot is decency. So I can't see you, but usually when I say that word, people roll their eyes and they think I'm about to sound like a Daily Mail or something. But I don't mean that sort of 1950s propriety thing. What I mean is, fundamentally, is enabling everybody who works in the business to do the right thing without asking for guidance particularly, really knowing, what am I doing what can I decide today to do to really add value in the long term, and to be free to do that, and to be free to mess up in doing that at times. And I think that's a really profound thing, because it allows us to do a number of things really radically differently. First, it means we don't need any rules. Because if you find, and we do find, incredibly intelligent people, I mean, really, really smart people to work at JustGiving, and they're super self-motivated, and they know the context of what we're trying to achieve, and we trust them, as Rick said before, to do the right thing, then you don't need any rules. We don't have rules on holidays, we don't have rules on expenses, we don't have org charts, we don't have any of that stuff. We don't need it. So once you have really people who know why they're here, and we give them the context to sort of do the right thing, they do. There's a real hard edge to this, and I really like Rick's talk before about it. We're not being nice. It really is intellectually quite a sort of argumentative place to work. We're not being nice, but frankly, we have a big job to do, and we want to do it brilliantly. So we don't want any of this stuff that gets in the way. So that's the point of decency. That leads me to the second point. How do you get the best out of self-motivated, super smart people? Well, you get out of the way and you put them together with other self-motivated, super smart people. Think of any achievement in life, even in your family. I mean, family, business, think of anything. It's always a collective, absolutely always. We've been hardwired to think it's about great leadership and great founder vision, etc. There's a little bit of that, but fundamentally it's a collective. It takes radically different forms of intelligence working together to create something really enduringly great. And I learned that most powerfully when I had my first meaningful job many years ago at Médecins Sans Frontières. I worked in the field as well as in sort of various head offices. And the thing that struck me most, and I didn't know it was abnormal, is that the most extraordinary, imagine yourself in a refugee camp having to set up a field hospital in a matter of days. Back in the day, we couldn't call Paris or Brussels to find out how to deal with these particular refugees, this particular terrain, these particular conditions. We would make, as a team, the decision, and then we'd ask for forgiveness later. And I thought that was normal. And that profoundly that decentralized, trust-based way of running teams, multidisciplinary teams, is really what inspired me. And one of the many reasons why at JustGiving we put the team first. The starfish, you might wonder why I bring up sort of wildlife just at this last stage. It's really the best analogy that we've got to describe the way that we work as a team. Because when you walk into a team room, it's not really, you'd be hard-pressed to find the boss, to spot the boss. It's not about who wins, the bosses don't win the argument. They lead through questioning. And of course, they'll have a lot of our answers very often because they tend to be more experienced, if you will. But that's the point. You don't, as a leader in JustGiving, you don't win every point through status. You lead through inquiry. And it's not consensus by far. In fact, it's quite argumentative as a place to work. So the third thing that really matters to us, which relates to the starfish really, is how we make decisions. I mean, a lot of people ask me, how does it work if everybody is empowered, that's a strange word, to take decisions? How does it actually work? Inquiry is our number one, or number three of our principles, as far as my story goes. We're all dazzled by the idea that one person has all the answers. In fact, it is collective intelligence that cracks big problems. And so our modus operandi at JustGiving is the inquiry. So instead of having plans, which we know are at best informed guesses, we set out problems, we ask questions, we then set out hypotheses, we select hypotheses that we can test at low cost, and then when the results come, some of them are good, some of them are bad, and when they're bad, we've got to be big enough to recognize that we got it wrong. And that's the hard part of working in an organization, sometimes like JustGiving, is that, if you think that if you pride yourself of having great power of foresight and amazing intuition, well, you're in for a shock. Because a lot of my bets get discounted through test and learn all the time. I'm running out of time to give you a cracking sort of test and learn example. So I'll just go straight to the end, or return to the first question that I wanted to ask. So can business ever be for good? I don't know whether there were any doubters at the start of this talk, but if there were, I hope I have convinced you that it can. I think the two in JustGiving are absolutely linked. We want to succeed, to be tremendously successful, and we want to do amazing social good at the same time. So I hope I've convinced you that it is possible. Is benevolent patient capital necessary? Absolutely, it's essential, and we're very grateful to have it. Is it enough? It's not. I believe that culture is equally important. And our culture, I don't know whether it can work elsewhere, but I know that it works for us. Our culture of personal integrity, absolute impeccable teamwork, and obsessive inquiry is the single most valuable asset that we have to delivering our mission. Thank you for listening.